Okay, good morning. This is Engage New York, 6th grade, Module 3, Lesson 4. You need the classwork and the problem set. Working today is going to be the opposites of a number, and we're going to be showing that on the number line. Exercise number 1 says, each non-zero integer has an opposite denoted negative a. Negative a and a are opposites if they are on the opposite side of 0 and the same distance from 0 on the number line. That's just a review of what we've already talked about. Moving down to example number 1. Every number has an opposite. Locate the number 8 and its opposite on the number line. So push pause until you do that. Okay, you should have the number 8 marked. Remember, we put a point on the number line by making a solid, heavy black spot on the number line where it intersects at that value. Okay, so here is 0. 8 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units from 0. So its location is 8 units to the right of 0. So the opposite of 8 would be 8 units to the left of 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now I have plotted 8 and its opposite on the number line. When you are plotting points on the number line, I do want you to label them. So the number that they have given us is 8. We're going to call it A. That is point A on my number line. The opposite of 8, the opposite of A, will be marked negative A, because this symbol, the hyphen, we've talked about, has several meanings, one of which being the opposite. It means the opposite. So negative A is the opposite of A. Okay, moving down to example number 2. It says to locate and label the opposites of the number on the number line. So we are locating and labeling the opposites of a number. So this will have a different value. A is 9. 9 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 units to the right of 0. So the opposite of 9 is going to be 9 units to the left of 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this will be negative A. B is negative 2. Negative 2 is 2 units left of 0. 1, 2. The opposite of that would be 2 units to the right of 0. 1, 2. Since that is B, this is the opposite of B. C is 4. D is negative 7. Okay, so 4 is 4 units to the right of 0. The opposite is 4 units to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got our point there. This represents the opposite of C on exercise number 2. And the last one is negative 7. Negative 7 is 7 units to the left of 0. The opposite would be 7 units to the right of 0. This is the opposite of D. Now, while you're looking at this, these integers are negative. And when we've labeled them, the opposite of A and the opposite of C, those have the negative symbol as well, the hyphen, which can also mean negative. Now in this case, 2 and 7 are positive integers. But when I label them, their label have the hyphen. Is that okay? In this case, it is okay, because we're not saying that this value is negative. we're saying that this value is the opposite of B, because the hyphen can mean opposite. So just keep that in mind when you're labeling the opposite. Use the hyphen as the symbol. The same as the opposite of 9 is -9. That hyphen there is our symbol. Okay, go ahead and turn to the back page. Number 3. The directions say to write the integer that represents the opposite of each situation and explain what 0 means in the situation. Okay, so for A it says 100 feet above sea level. So when it uses the word above, that makes me think of a vertical number line. So my value is 100 feet above sea level. The directions say to write the integer that represents the opposite. So the opposite of 100 feet above sea level, okay, here would be 0. This would be 1 unit above. So the opposite is 100 feet below sea level. So here I have my opposite, so the integer would be -100. Now it says explain what 0 means in this situation. So there's 2 parts. Write the integer that represents the opposite and explain what 0 means. So now we have to go back and look. What is the label for this number? 100 feet above sea level. So this is 100 feet above what? Sea level. So in this case, 0 represents sea level. And I will double check it as saying, so -100 would be 100 feet below sea level. We're talking about everything in reference to sea level. So sea level is our 0. That's our starting point. It's all about what's above and below sea level. So this would be a number line of elevation. Okay, moving to number 2. Actually, 3B, 32 degrees below 0. So this is 3B. 32 degrees below 0. It used the word below, so again, I'm going to show that on a vertical number line. 32 degrees below 0. So here is 0, 32 degrees below 0, so I know it's negative. It's asking for the integer that represents the opposite. So the opposite of -32 is +32. So the integer that represents the opposite is 32. And now it's asking me, what does 0 represent in this situation? Well, it just says 32 degrees below 0. So now 32 what? It said 32 degrees. So if this is 32 degrees below 0, this is 32 degrees above 0, this would represent 0 degrees. And then what unit are we measuring? So this would be measuring temperature. And what unit, what scale are we using? It says Celsius. So 0 represents 0 degrees Celsius. Okay, go ahead and do 3C on your own. Push pause when you're finished and we'll go over it together. Okay, 3C says a withdrawal of $25. So we're going to think back to lesson 2. A withdraw is when you take money out of your account. So it would be a negative transaction. So if I took money out of my account, if I took a withdrawal of $25, that would be -25. That would be the effect on my account. So it asks for the opposite of that. So the opposite of a withdraw, or taking money out, is a deposit. So the opposite of taking out $25 would be putting in $25, would be a deposit of $25. So So now we have to think about what does 0 represent in this situation. Our label for 25 is dollars, so we're talking about money. So it would be easy for us to say that 0 represents $0. But 0 doesn't mean that I have no money in my account. Because this isn't, it doesn't tell us how much money I started with. So this does not represent my account balance. It could represent your starting balance. This is the starting point, and if you took out $25, then it would go down from there. Or if you put in $25, it would go up from there. It would be your starting balance. Or it could represent no transaction, no change in your account balance. So be careful with that when we're talking about money. Unless it gives you the starting balance or it tells you're starting with 0, 0 doesn't mean you have no money in the account. It's just the point where you're starting before these transactions, or it represents no change in your balance, no transaction. Okay, we'll move down to example number 2. Maria decides to take a walk along Central Avenue to purchase a book at the bookstore. On her way, she passes the Furry Friends Pet Shop and goes in to look for a new leash for her dog. Furry Friends Pet Shop is 7 blocks west of the bookstore. She leaves Furry Friends Pet Shop and walks towards the bookstore to look at some books. After she leaves the bookstore, she heads east for 7 blocks and stops at Ray's Pet Shop to see if she can find a new leash at a better price. I like bargain shoppers. Which location, if any, is the farthest from Maria while she's at the bookstore? We have to determine an appropriate scale and model the situation on the number line they've provided. So I want you to reread this to yourself, paying special attention to the locations that Maria stops, and also what are they asking us to find. Okay, in this case, Maria goes 3 places. The first place that it talks about are Furry Friends Pet Store, which I'm going to call FF. She goes to the bookstore, and she goes to Ray's Pet Shop. Those are the 3 places that she goes. It talks about direction, that she's traveling east and west. So when we're looking at the number line, if we said up at the top would be north, the bottom would be south, so left and right would represent our east and west, which makes sense on a horizontal number line. So some of you might know, never eat sour wheat. If you do that, that's fine. That will get you in the right direction. But you could make a mistake and say never eat sour wheat, and that would be wrong. So a way that I like to make sure my east and west are in the right spot, it spells wheat. So west is to the left, east is to the right. Those are the directions we're going to move on the number line. Okay, so we have to figure out what is our starting point. So when they tell us where Furry Friends Pet Shop is located, it's 7 blocks west of the bookstore. When it talks about where Ray's Pet Shop is located, it's 7 blocks east of the bookstore. So both of these locations are in reference to the bookstore. They have both of these places in common. So we are going to call the bookstore 0. 0 is at the bookstore, because now we can move west and east from the bookstore based on the information that they've given us. Okay, she is going on her way. She passes the Furry Friends Pet Shop and goes in to look for a new leash for her dog. Furry Friends Pet Shop is 7 blocks west of the bookstore. So if we start at the bookstore, and we're moving 7 blocks west.